Welcome, and how are you doing? I hope that you are having a fantastic day. Today we're going to talk about cryptocurrency investing for beginners. We're going to look at crypto and Wall Street greed. So you may be asking yourself, what in the world does Wall Street greed have to do with cryptocurrency? Well, let's dive into it. First, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is my opinion. I am not smarter than you. You are smarter than you realize. Do not trust what I say. Do your own research. So, one of the things that I always add to that I've been adding to my crypto investing for beginners series is this chart. And the reason for that is, in my opinion, this chart is the most important thing you need to know as a beginner investor. This will have a lot to do with the difference between making money and losing money. So let me show you what this chart is about. If you invested $1,000 into Bitcoin and kept it in there for 3 years, how much money would you make? So if you bought Bitcoin on January 1, 2017 and held it until October 2019, now that's not quite 3 years, but your profit after 2 years and 9 months would be $8,640. So that $1,000 increased by eightfold. Now, this breaks down every single year. If you bought it on January 1st, all the way back to the beginning of Bitcoin in 2011. And that very first year, if you had bought Bitcoin and held it for 3 years, you would have made $2.6 million. Now, the reason why this is so important is historically, and I know that history doesn't mean it will repeat itself. As I say in here, past results are no indication of future performance. In other words, even though this is what happened in the past, we can't be 100% confident that this is what will happen in the next 3 years. Now, in my opinion, I think that's very likely, but only time will tell. Once it's written in the history books, then we'll know for sure. I think there's a strong likelihood of this continuing to be true, but what can happen is that things can change drastically enough that what was true historically can suddenly no longer be true. Now, whether or not we've had that kind of a drastic change, only time will tell. So based off of everything I know about cryptocurrency, I have not seen anything that indicates that this is going to be any different. But the key thing here is, if you bought Bitcoin and kept it for at least 3 years over the last 10 years, over the life of Bitcoin, if you held it for at least 3 years, 100% of the time you would make money. The only way historically now to lose money with Bitcoin was to sell it before you held on to it for 3 years. And that's really, really important. A lot of people are very cautious or don't want to invest in Bitcoin because they think they're concerned about losing money. And I understand that completely. I don't want to lose money either. And there's been times when I've watched Bitcoin drop and I've wanted to sell. I'm thankful that I haven't yet and that I've continued to hold strong. I'm believing that we're going to see some significant profits in the near future. But again, that's just my opinion, and we'll know once it's written in the history books. So we're going to talk today about the greediest people in the world, and that's Wall Street. Wall Street has a reputation of being the greediest people in the world. And so one of the questions I want to ask you is, why is Wall Street greedy? What is it about Wall Street that has given them the reputation of being the greediest people in the world? And I'm not asking that to be funny or slight or whatever. I really am serious. I want you to consider that. I want you to ponder it for a moment. What What is different about people that work on Wall Street that is different from people that work in any other industry in the world? You know, you've got a similar mix. You've got people of different races. You've got people of different sizes. You've got skinny people and fat people. You got old people. You got young people. So why is it that it has a reputation of being, they have a reputation of being the greediest people in the world? I'll tell you my opinion on the answer to that question. And I think the answer is because that's what they sell. If you were a farmer, you would sell whatever it is that you grow. If you were if you made computers, then you would sell computers. If you worked for a company that makes peanut butter, then you would sell peanut butter. If you worked for a company that makes automobiles, then you would be selling automobiles, and your time and your life would be consumed with automobiles. Or your life and your time would be consumed with whatever industry that you're in. In fact, in some cases, even though you may be the company you work for may be in a particular industry, you work for a particular department of that company. Maybe you work in human resources. And so your life would be consumed with dealing with human resource issues. Or maybe you're an accountant. Your life would be consumed with accounting and numbers and how to make, how to do balance sheets and how to turn things more profitable and how to help a company save money and those kinds of issues. Well, when you look at Wall Street, what is their product? The product that Wall Street sells is if you buy this investment, you'll make money. In other words, their product is profit. Their product is the execution of being greedy in a sense. Now, I don't want to say greedy is good or bad. There's too many moral things that go on when you hear the word greedy, and I'm trying to not include that in this conversation. I'm not trying to say that Wall Street people are bad people because they're the greediest, but I do want to point out that one of the reasons why they're greedy is because they're experts at finding an investment. They're experts at taking that investment and producing money from that investment. And so their expertise is profit. Their expertise is income. Their expertise is buying an asset and producing a positive result, whether they work for the New York Stock Exchange or they're working for a hedge fund or some other aspect of Wall Street. The product that they sell is, hey, invest your money in this and we'll show you how to make XYZ in profit later. And we're gonna turn your investment so that your money goes to work for you and makes you more money. And so I think the reason why Wall Street has a reputation of being the greediest people in the world is in direct relationship to the product that they sell. And so one of the things that I want to talk to you about in this video is if Wall Street are experts at producing a return through an investment, they may be an expert on learning how to find a return with cryptocurrency. Okay? Now, the next question I wanted to address is, will Wall Street change cryptocurrency? Is cryptocurrency going to become different because of Wall Street's involvement and influence on cryptocurrency? There's a lot of people who got involved. Some people got involved in cryptocurrency because they heard, hey, if you invest and buy some Bitcoin, Bitcoin's price goes up, you'll make money. Other people got involved with Bitcoin because they heard, hey, this internet money was created so that you could take back control of your finances. You don't have to have something that the government monitors. You don't have to have a currency that the government can control and can tell you what to do with it. You can transact privately, et cetera, et cetera. And so some people got involved with Bitcoin more out of I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not coming to me, but it was more out of a moral, out of a particular ideology, a view of the world, a view of what's good and bad, as opposed to, hey, I can put my money here and I'm going to get a profit from it. And so those old timers, some of them really dislike the changes that are happening in cryptocurrency. And that's kind of why I asked this question, because cryptocurrency is just simply going to change over time. There's no stopping that. And this scale right here is an example of that. This is a scale from 1930. And you may be asking yourself, well, why did you put a picture of this old scale into a conversation about cryptocurrency? The reason why is this scale was built by a company that you probably know very well. Have you ever heard of IBM? Yes, International Business Computers. IBM started with meat scales, with produce scales at the grocery store. In fact, the reason why this old scale has so many dials on here, so many different numbers across here, is that as you put produce or meat on the scale, you would read the line across, you would find the dollar per pound or dollar per ounces, and that would tell you how much to charge, because there's dollar amounts on this. This middle part is the weight, but this section is all dollars and change. And so you would know, okay, I need to charge this person X amount for the steak because the steak falls into this category and falls into that category. And so therefore the total of the dollars and the change is XYZ. And so they use these kinds of scales so that they could very quickly figure out what to charge their customers. The interesting thing is nobody ever thinks of IBM as a company that sells scales, because it's been so long since they've done that. They've transformed, they've changed. Their product line no longer includes scales. In fact, when I was growing up, one of the things that IBM was known for was its electric typewriters. Well, you can't even find those typewriters anymore because of computers. You know, those were the world leading class best typewriters around. If you wanted the top of the line typewriter, you might buy an IBM electric, and they don't even exist anymore. And so cryptocurrency is going to go through a similar evolution. The things that we use cryptocurrency for today are going to change over time. You know, a good example of that is there's a cryptocurrency coin out there called Solve, S-L-O-V-E, Solve. I just spelled it wrong, S-O-L-V-E. Solve, the purpose of that cryptocurrency is when you go to your doctor and your doctor writes up a report about you, that gets added to the blockchain. And when your doctor adds your medical report onto the blockchain, he will pay for that using the Solve cryptocurrency. Then when you go and buy an Apple Watch and the Apple Watch is monitoring your heart, your Apple Watch can also connect to the Solve blockchain and transmit the data from your Apple Watch about your heartbeat and how it's performing and so on and so forth, and add that to the Solve blockchain. And all of this is covered because it's got cryptographic technology that's incorporated into that, so that those who don't have permission cannot read your medical history. But because it's contained on the blockchain, it's immutable, meaning nobody can change it. It's protected by cryptography at the database level. You see, one of the problems with hospitals that have been hacked is their databases are not encrypted. And because of the way, some of the differences between blockchain is when records are added, those records are added in a way that you can never ever change the value in the record. Otherwise, the blockchain will no longer, as a whole, add up to the correct cryptographic values, and people will know, oh, this is a phony or faulty blockchain, therefore don't use this file. Use the file that runs, that matches the mathematical algorithms correctly, that passes the cryptographic test. And so those cryptographic tests ensure the validity of the data in the blockchain, and that data has not been manipulated by somebody. So anyway, all of that is much deeper than I had intended to go. I was trying to keep it a little bit light, and wham, I just went deep on you. I apologize. So how can we respond to Wall Street? Well, if Wall Street is a master at finding good investments and their whole focus is on how much money can I make with this investment, or where's the best place to invest my money for a profit, then one of the ways that we can respond to Wall Street is if we're interested in making an investment that turns a profit, maybe we should follow the money. If we follow the money and follow what Wall Street is doing, we may be able to use Wall Street's skills to help us make a profit from our own investments. Because nobody puts money into an investment hoping that they're going to lose money. Everybody that's putting money into some kind of investment expects a return of some form. And so by following the money, we're going to learn more about what Wall Street is doing, and then we can make an educated decision about what do I want to do. So the first place, the 4 places that we're going to look at today as far as Wall Street's involvement with cryptocurrency is we're going to take a brief look at the BAKKT Exchange. We're going to take a look at institutional money. We're going to take a look at corporations that are involved with cryptocurrency, and we're going to take a quick look at endowment funds. So let's get into it. The first place is the BAKKT Exchange. In fact, let me start with this slide here. So BAKKT, if you don't know, is a joint venture between the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange. In other words, the people who own the world's most well-known stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange is the epitome of Wall Street. You can't get any more Wall Street than the New York Stock Exchange. And this is a joint venture between that company and Microsoft and Starbucks. The 3 of them spent almost $500 million and 4 years building the BAKKT Exchange, and the BAKKT Exchange went live on September 23rd. So it's been live now for just 2 months. Today is November 23rd, 2019. And so one of the things that we can see from the BAKKT Exchange is volume numbers. Now, this chart here just shows the price of Bitcoin that the BAKKT Exchange is selling Bitcoin monthly futures and Bitcoin daily futures. And this is the monthly future for December 19th to December 2019, the 22nd of it. So it's the month of December future monthly contract. And we can see that the price of that contract started the day out selling at $7,700 and ended the day somewhere around $7,300 with a volume of 2,469. Well, this chart doesn't really show us the information that I want, so let me go to this chart here. Now, this chart shows the daily volumes, and the daily volume was this number down here. This volume number represents the total number of contracts purchased all day long on the BAKKT Exchange as of November 22nd, 2019. All right? And so this chart, this one bar right here, shows us that particular, the volume for November 23rd, 2019. That's this volume here. This bar is for the day before that, the 22nd. This is the 21st. This is the 20th, etc. And you can see you had $12.4 million in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin contracts sold the day before. But man, it almost doubled the amount of Bitcoin contracts sold on Friday, the 22nd. And you might be asking, well, what was the catalyst that did that? Well, this gray line is the price of Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin got down to a price at this we'll go back here to see what the price level was. $7,330 is kind of, 7,605 was the high. The low is down here around 6,800. So with the price running around 7,200 for a lot of the day, that triggered institutional buyers. Because right now on the BAKKT Exchange, the only people that can buy these monthly futures are institutional investors. In other words, investors that have $1 million, $5 million, $1 billion that they want to invest. Those are the people that are on the exchanges that BAKKT does business with, and those are the people who are able to buy a BAKKT Bitcoin monthly futures contract. And so it's interesting to note that when we hit this price point, all of a sudden the sales skyrocketed. So based on that information, I would tend to say that the institutions think that's a great buy. That's a clue we can use for our own cryptocurrency investing. If this is where the big institutions want to buy Bitcoin, that might be a good time for me to invest. Now, I would use that information, and I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is my opinion. I would use that information if I had a larger amount of money I was going to invest all at one time. I'd be like, okay, this is the right time to do it, and sock that money into Bitcoin. If I didn't have like a savings account that I said, okay, we're taking the money out of the savings account, we're waiting for the right timing, then we'll invest it in Bitcoin. If that's not what I was doing, if I was going to say, I'm going to take a certain amount of money every week or every 2 weeks or once a month and buy Bitcoin, similar to how people will put money into a 401k account. They'll put money into a 401k account normally every time they get a paycheck. And there's a certain amount of money that's just automatically taken out of the paycheck and invested in their retirement account. A lot of people are doing that with Bitcoin, and that's also a really good way of investing in Bitcoin. And so this becomes less relevant if you're investing on a dollar cost averaging. Dollar cost averaging is just a fancy way to say, hey, you're putting money in every week or every month or every 2 weeks, but you're putting money into Bitcoin on a regular basis. That's called dollar cost averaging. And if you're going dollar cost averaging, then you almost don't care what the price is. You're just going to put the money in regardless because you expect in the long term it's going to trend up. And just like with the chart we showed at the beginning, you're thinking, hey, I'm just going to do this for X number of years, more than 3 years, and I'll show a profit and life will be wonderful. This is a larger version of the same chart. If you want to pause the video, I know it looks like that this bar is actually the 22nd, but it was not. The 22nd is this bar here. And if you want to reference that, then all of these links are in the comments below, so take a look at the links. We're going to look at another aspect of BAKKT's Bitcoin futures is launching in Singapore in just 2 weeks. And so the first week of December 2019, the BAKKT futures will be available to the people that live in Singapore. Now, because I'm not familiar with Singapore, I've never visited Singapore, I decided that I wanted to do a little bit of research to learn more about it. And the first thing that I noticed is that BAKKT ICE is the acronym for the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange. And ICE has been working with the Monetary Authority of Singapore to get this set up. And what they've set up is ICE of Singapore. I don't see it right off the top of my head, but ICE of Singapore is an existing business, similar, like the New York Stock Exchange has been around for 100 years. Well, ICE of Singapore has been around for a long time, and they already trade futures contracts. It's just that the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, has approved BAKKT to start offering their future contracts in their Singapore office. And so I don't know all of the plans that BAKKT has. They haven't made that information public. I don't work for BAKKT. And so the only information I know about BAKKT is what I can get off of reading articles or going to the BAKKT website, etc., etc. Obviously, this was not something that they just did last week. Working with the monetary authority in Singapore was probably something that they've had in the works for weeks or months or possibly longer than a year. I don't know because I haven't found any information that confirms or denies that. Bottom line is, BAKKT is the company that owns BAKKT, ICE, is a $9 billion company. The Intercontinental Exchange, that's what ICE stands for, Intercontinental Exchange. The Intercontinental Exchange is a $9 billion company. I mean, it's like a Microsoft or a Starbucks in terms of its size. It's a multi-billion dollar business. And as a multi-billion dollar business, they're not going to invest $500 million in 4 years into something called BAKKT if they don't have a plan. And this whole thing with Singapore is part of that plan. Another part of that plan is the consumer or retail app that BAKKT will be launching in January or sometime in 2020, that people can actually use Bitcoin to buy Starbucks coffee or use it at other retail outlets. And I'm sure that as we get more information about that from BAKKT, that will like I doubt that Starbucks will be the only place that app will be usable at. I'm sure you'll be able to spend your Bitcoin at thousands of different locations all around the world. And so the point is that not only has not only has BAKKT come into existence just a few weeks ago, but they obviously have really big plans for BAKKT all the way around. And so this is another example of Wall Street getting heavily invested in terms of time, money, and resources into something that they expect to see a long-term return from. They're definitely not doing this because they think it'll be something they'll do for this year, and next year they're going to do something else. I doubt that. The New York Stock Exchange isn't that way. It wasn't something that got started and went away after a couple of years. It's been around for over 100 years. And so I'm sure that they're expecting that the BAKKT Exchange will be similar, that it'll be around for a really, really long time. And who knows where its ultimate influence or growth will go. It may end up being like IBM that started out with meat scales. BAKKT started out with stock trader exchanges, and who knows where they could go in the future. You know, once they come out with this application where you can use Bitcoin to buy your Starbucks coffee, who knows where that's going to lead to. So I also wanted to learn a little bit more about Singapore, since that's where the BAKKT Exchange is going, and I thought this was also very interesting, and so I decided to include it into our conversation today, even though it goes to show the determination of the BAKKT organization to be profitable, because they chose Singapore as the second world location that they're opening up the Bitcoin futures contracts. And I think they did that because the people in Singapore are among the world's richest people. In fact, half of the population in Singapore is the 10% wealthiest people in the world. And Singapore is not a very large island. It's a fairly small island. It's not huge by any means, but out of 226,000 people that live in Singapore, they actually qualify for the 1% world's wealthiest people in the world. In fact, there's some bullet points I thought were interesting down here. Singaporeans are the world's 6th richest people. There are 207,000 millionaires in Singapore, and half of the adult population is among the world's richest 10%. Despite this, inequality is not extreme. You know, a lot of people complain in the United States that, hey, there's a huge disparity in inequality between the rich and the poor. Well, apparently in Singapore, the inequality is not extreme. In 2019, the average Singaporean had $300,000 to their name. Now, I remember hearing news articles. I don't know if those are true or not, but I remember hearing news articles in the last year or so that were saying that the average American doesn't even have $1,000 cash. And for the average person living in Singapore, that they have $300,000 to their name. That's amazing. That's significant. The report noted that despite poor job prospects and high house prices, millennials are accumulating wealth thanks to financial aid from their parents. I don't remember that. Anyway, the average, so the $300,000 has tripled since 2000. In other words, back in 2000, 2001, 2002, etc., that figure was more like 100,000, and today it's 300,000, and that's because of high savings, increased asset prices, and a better exchange rate. So they're getting a better exchange rate when they turn Singapore dollars into dollars with other countries. So I just thought that was amazing. Always thought of the United States as one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but Singapore has definitely, in many ways, far surpassed the United States in this regard. I don't know hardly anybody that has $300,000 to their name. And for that to be the case for the average Singaporean, that's pretty amazing. So that's about the BAKKT Exchange. Let's talk briefly about institutional money. Now, this firm, Grayscale, put out a digital asset investment report. Now, who Grayscale is they're a firm that creates a cryptocurrency fund that can be purchased. So if you go out to, maybe you have a E-Trade account, or you've got a TradeStation account, or you have a stock exchange through Fidelity or Charles Schwab or one of the other online brokerage firms, you can go out there to your stock account and you can buy a Grayscale traded fund right through the stock exchange that'll give you exposure to cryptocurrency. And this report is a report about what's happening in the third quarter of 2019 with this particular fund. And so there's a lot of different interesting details. The first one is the majority of investments, 84%, came from institutional investors, and that was dominated by hedge funds. And so when we look at this report, the first thing that we know about the third quarter of 2019 is that the dollars and investments that we see in here is money that came from institutional investors. And so if we want to follow the money and learn what institutions are doing when it comes to cryptocurrency, then this Grayscale report is a good place for us to go to learn more about what are institutions investing in when it comes to cryptocurrency. And so I'm going to scroll past a couple of things here, and we're going to go to this chart right here. Now, this chart, each bar represents a different quarter or 3 months. And you can see this is December 2017, and December 2017 is when Bitcoin hit the $20,000 price. And so that particular quarter, you can see that Grayscale jumped from being very minuscule to having a significant amount of money invested into their fund during that quarter. And then you can kind of see that by December of 2018, it dropped off pretty significantly. And then in 2019, it's jumped up dramatically to where the third quarter of 2019 has been their best quarter to date. The other interesting thing is these colors indicate different cryptocurrency tokens. And so we have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum, we have XRP, we have Stellar Lumens, we have Litecoin, Ethereum Classic, Zcash, Bitcoin Cash, Zen. All of these are different cryptocurrencies, and we can see based off of the colors in this bar what institutions, which cryptocurrencies are institutions investing in. And we can learn here that for the most part, institutions are putting, and I'm guessing at that bar, but that looks pretty close to 75% of the bar is in that darker blue Bitcoin color. Might even be 80%, not sure. But the majority of the money went into Bitcoin. A fairly good portion of the money went into Ethereum. And then it looks like, I think that is the color for Ethereum Classic. And that would kind of make sense. Ethereum Classic is still fairly popular among a lot of people. Ethereum Classic is not one of my favorite coins, but it looks like it's more popular with institutions than I would have expected. Anyway, so the learning thing here is that as of the last 3 months, August, September, and July, August, and September. In July, August, and September, for whatever reason, those months have been very significant for institutions investing in cryptocurrency. We're seeing the greatest amount of influx from institutions during those 3 months. I've also read other articles that also confirm that. Coinbase is getting a lot of institutional investments, and they have reported that they're getting as much as $1 billion to $2 billion per month in institutional investors getting involved with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies through the Coinbase institutional exchange. And so there's a lot of other places that we can learn what is the institutional money doing with cryptocurrency. The next thing that we wanted to talk about is corporations involved with cryptocurrency. Because if you want to follow the money, if you want to follow Wall Street, where some of these large corporations are not exactly Wall Street directly, they are Wall Street indirectly in the sense that A, they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange or a similar stock exchange. They're familiar with SEC regulations and guidelines. They have big money and deep pockets, and they are very cautious, very careful before they spend large amounts of money in projects. And we're about to look at some of the different large corporations that are getting involved in multi-million-dollar projects with cryptocurrency. And so I'm going to show you here the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. Now, Ethereum is one of the different cryptocurrencies. And what makes Ethereum, one of the things that makes Ethereum unique among all cryptocurrencies is Ethereum has something called smart contracts. And so you may be saying, well, what's a smart contract? Think of a smart contract as a programming language. It's basically a computer programming language, and if you learn that language, you can write a program that runs on the Ethereum blockchain that can be used for different things. And so some of the things that these smart contracts have been used for is you may have heard about the different companies that provide like the IBM Food Network, for example, is a great example of a usage of blockchain. The IBM Food Network helps companies trace back food from its origin, from the actual farm to the different distributors, and then finally to the grocery store that produce or that meat was sold at. And so by using the Food Network, all of that data was added to a blockchain. And because the blockchain is immutable, nobody is able to go back and alter the data and try and fudge it and say, oh no, that lettuce that's poisoned all those people didn't come from us. Well, I'm sorry, but nobody could change the blockchain, and therefore it was you, because we have an immutable transaction on the blockchain that shows that you provided that to us. And this is what Susie and Joe bought at the grocery store that it eventually got delivered to, and they got sick and died. And so that's another use of blockchain. Another example of blockchain is people are building crypto casinos using blockchain, or they're setting things up so that you can get different kinds of data added to the blockchain. So one of those kinds of data is like the Weather Channel, but they're recording the weather information on the blockchain so that people who are writing different programs can actually access that data. And because it's immutable, people can't go and say, oh no, the temperature wasn't 25, it was 35, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know why they would want to alter that, but that's just an example of one of the things that blockchain is getting used for, is as a place to store external data such as stock market prices or other similar type information, and then they're able to write a contract onto the Ethereum Enterprise Ethereum Alliance blockchain and pull that data out and use it for different applications. You know, another application that gets written in these contracts is decentralized finance. And so if you wanted to buy some cryptocurrency and then loan it to a farmer in Africa, there's different websites that are set up for doing microloans like that using cryptocurrency. And all of that is handled through smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. And so people are doing some amazing things. There's hundreds and thousands of different cryptos. Actually, there's about 2,000 cryptocurrencies on Ethereum. But when you broke those down into different categories, there's probably several hundred different kinds of projects or different categories that these projects are taking on. So what we want to look here is, what are the corporations that are involved with the Ethereum blockchain and what are they building? So I'm not going to really talk about what they're building. If you want to come to this link, I'll include it in the article below and you can research this more in depth. But I did want to point out what kinds of businesses, what kinds of corporations are involved in this. So Accenture is they're a consulting service and they do mostly software programming consulting. AMD is a company that makes chips that go into PCs and laptops. Citibank is well known. A lot of people have their bank accounts at Citibank. Cognizant Technology Solutions is similar to Accenture up here, and Cognizant also does computer programming. You have Ernst & Young. We have FedEx. FedEx has got a blockchain project that they're highly involved with. Ing Bank. We have Intel. They make chips that go into personal computers and laptops. You have John Hancock Life Insurance, JP Morgan, KEB Bank, Microsoft. Everybody is familiar with Microsoft Windows and Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Word. And so Microsoft has got a number of different blockchain projects going on. PricewaterhouseCoopers. You have Wipro, which is another computer consulting firm. So as you can see, I didn't highlight everybody. I just highlighted the ones that I really wanted to point out. There's quite a number of different Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies that are involved with cryptocurrency, and they're investing millions into various cryptocurrency projects. And so cryptocurrency is not something that's going away in the near future. It's something that is growing rapidly. Some of this growth you don't see yet because they're still building the backbone. You know, like we talked about BAKKT a while ago, it took them 4 years to build this BAKKT exchange. It wasn't something that just came up overnight. In fact, when they announced the BAKKT exchange a year ago, it seemed like it came out of nowhere because most people didn't even know that the New York Stock Exchange was working on building a cryptocurrency exchange until they announced it. And so the same is true with a lot of these different corporations. They're building stuff that they're not going to go fully public with until they're ready for the public to start using it, until they're ready to sell it or offer it to the public. That's when they'll really start getting behind promoting whatever all these different projects are. And so over time, we will learn more and more about many of these different blockchain projects. So the last area I wanted to talk about was endowment funds. Now, endowment funds is like, you know, Harvard University has one of the largest endowment funds among all colleges. They have $29 billion. That's billion with a big B. They have $29 billion that they can invest in different things. And this talks about how endowments are allocating funds to cryptocurrency investments. And in this particular survey, they found after surveying or talking with over 150 endowment funds that included funds like Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and a whole bunch of others, because if it's 150, it's quite a few. They found that out of those 150, 94% of the endowments have already purchased cryptocurrency in the past 12 months. They also found that 94% of them are planning on either keeping the same amount invested or increasing that investment, and that only 7% believe that they were going to decrease their cryptocurrency investments. And so that's pretty significant to know that the likes of a Harvard with $29 billion to invest has chosen to take a portion of that money and put it into cryptocurrency. Quite significant indeed. And so if you want to be successful with investing, one of the best places to look is where are the expert investors investing? And that's what I've shown you today. We've talked about where are the expert investors putting their money and what are they doing with it. So I want to share with you what my recommendation to my mom is. I am not able to give you financial advice, but I can definitely share my opinion with my mom, and I'm going to share with you my opinion that I shared with my mom. And so my recommendation to my mom is that she should invest in Bitcoin and a few other altcoins. She should make a 3-year commitment. Don't do this like it's something you're just going to drop some money in and then pull your money out because it's going up and down. I promise you, once you put your money into Bitcoin, it won't be long before it drops significantly, but hold on, wait, and eventually that will turn around, especially if it follows the historical pattern. If it does follow the historical pattern, then over a 3-year commitment, you will not lose money. And the last thing is continue to learn more about cryptocurrencies. As you can see, I mean, all of these different projects is a really great example of the cryptocurrency market is exploding, but it's making huge changes. And by continuing to learn more about it, you'll know more about what's coming down the pike, what people are building, what's happening with it, what regulations are new, what regulations should you be concerned about, what regulations could you care less about, et cetera, et cetera. And so I want to encourage you to continue to learn more about cryptocurrency because this isn't something that'll go away. It'll be more like smartphones. I mean, it wasn't long ago that none of us owned a smartphone, and yet today, even even the kids in schools, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school, they're all using smartphones to a large degree. And so this is something that will definitely impact our smartphones and a lot of other areas of our lives. And so it's a good idea to stay up with it. My final comment is, how can I be of service to you? Is there any questions that you have from my presentation today, from this little video? Is there something that you disagree with or something that I didn't do a very good job explaining? Maybe I left some important facts out that you either know about and thought I should share, or that I didn't do a very good job describing and you want me to describe it better. Whatever the case is, or if you just completely disagree with me, I want to invite you to provide your polite disagreements. You know things I don't know. I know things that you don't know. And when the two of us share what we know, we'll both grow together. We'll become smarter together. And so please share your disagreements, your polite disagreements below. In the meantime, I hope that you'll like, subscribe, and hodl. Have a fantastic day.